Um, in the beginning, I would like to discuss why is public opinion important? Why do we need to understand public opinion? Because as we know that in risk communication or science communication, there's a tradition of so-called deficit model. So the scientists or the government think that the general public does not cooperate or does not support scientific innovations because they do not know too much. They do not know enough. So the solution is to educate the general public to make them understand science, and then their attitude will automatically become positive. But that's no longer the case because decades of public opinion research find out that knowledge is probably not the only factors that shape public opinion. So here I would like to talk about two examples why public opinion is important, especially in the local context. The first one is um, public opinion may be able to influence policy making. Um, the Guoguang Petrochemical Company in Taiwan was planning to build a factory in Changhua County. Okay, Changhua County is located in the central part of Taiwan. Aware of the potential negative impact of the factor, either to local environment or to human health, residents and some environmental groups have launched years of protest to stop these projects. And because of their efforts, in 2011, the government agreed to halt the constructions. So this is one example of how public opinion can affect policy making. And the second example has to do with the fourth nuclear power plant located in New Taipei City. So public opposition against nuclear power has been there for a long time in Taiwan, but the level increases after the Fukushima nuclear accident happening in 2011. Numerous protests were staged to urge the government to stop the construction of the fourth nuclear power plants. The government finally agreed in 2014, but later in 2018, as you may know, the proponents of nuclear power successfully resurrect the possibility of using nuclear power by winning the referendum. But in this case, both the proponents and opponents were able to affect policy making by showing their preferences. Okay, so these two examples shows that public opinions are really important, either for the government, or for scientists, or for the general public. And the second reason why we need to understand public opinion is that we need public cooperation in the carbon reduction process. We know that many countries in the world have already been submitting INDC to show their determination of reducing carbon emissions, and Taiwan is not an exception. So Taiwan aims to make its carbon emission 50% lower than the BAU standard by 2030. So that's the INDC that Taiwanese government submitted. Another goal that Taiwanese government is trying to achieve is in 2050, the carbon emission will be 50% lower than the 2005 level, and that is stipulated in our Greenhouse Gases Reduction and Management Act. So, and right now I'm going to talk about some information about Taiwan and how vulnerable it is to climate change. Okay, so Taiwan is located in the southwest of Pacific Ocean, and it's densely populated. Our population is slightly more than 23 million, but 2/3 of our lands are mountainous, meaning that it's not good for people to live. And Taiwan is considered very vulnerable to the results of extreme climate conditions. And regarding energy, as Professor Leo have mentioned a couple of days ago, Taiwan depends mostly on imported energy. about 99% of the energy were imported. We have several important natural disasters in the past few years, and the most significant one is the typhoon Morocco happening in 2009. That was the most devastating typhoon in 50 years, and it caused more than 600 casualties, destroying several villages, including completely wiping out a village called Shaolin Village. So the mudslides or the landslides caused by Typhoon Morocco was really serious. So it generates discussions on national land management and preservation policies, as well as environmental protection policies to cope with climate disasters. In 2016, we have a cold snap. So as you may know, it brought snow in Taipei. So Taipei is not in the mountainous area, so usually we don't have the privilege to see beautiful snow. But in 2016, it even snowed near my university, which has an elevation only of 100 meters. So that's quite unusual for a normal weather in Taiwan. What's tricky is several months later, also in 2016, we experienced a very serious drought. Taipei and New Taipei City and some other cities in Taiwan are experiencing water rationing. Okay, so a drought followed a very unusual cold snap. So meaning that the weather in Taiwan has become very different compared with what it used to be before. And in 2018, about August, there was also another serious floods in Taiwan that resulted in 7 deaths and thousands of people being displaced. Okay, so this kind of extreme weather conditions has become more and more frequently in the recent years. So what do people think about climate change? I'm going to introduce you some survey findings that I and my colleagues have been conducting over the past 10 years. Okay, so there are 6 different telephone surveys, and I probably will not go through each one of them. And some findings or some of the charts I show later will be based on a few of them or a mixture of them. But the first data set that we collect is back in 2009. The second one is from 2011. The third one is 2013. And the fourth one is 15, and then 17, then 18. All of these are public opinion representative phone surveys. And I marked several of the important events in between these telephone calls in case that these important weather events may influence how the general public think about climate change. And again, in 2009, we see this Typhoon Morocco. In August, it hit Taiwan and causes a lot of damage. And in 2011, the Fukushima nuclear accident. So it may influence how people view energy and also their related opinion regarding climate change. Between 2011 and 2013, we have several large-scale anti-nuclear protests. And also in between 2013 and 15. What is important is that in 2017, we have a large-scale power outage. So our survey of in this wave 4 is conducted 2 months after this power outage. And although this is not within my presentation, we observed that people's opinion about nuclear power or energy use is quite different. Okay, so the support for nuclear energy increases significantly after this power outage. In 2016, there's a lot of discussion of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. In 2018, the government announces plastic bans. And also at the end of the 2018, we held several referendums And some of the questions are related to the use of energy and also environmental issues. So the survey was conducted in July and the end of June. And but let us continue with how the general public think about climate change in Taiwan. The first one I'm going to talk about is climate change awareness. And this question, we simply ask the respondents, have you heard about the term climate change or global warming? Okay, just purely, have you heard of it? As you can see, from 2009, there are 78.6% of people who have heard about the term. It steadily increases to 2013. In 2015, the number slightly decreased, but maybe this is because we are conducting a cross-sectional survey and the sampling issues are resulting in slightly different results. But this is still within the margin of error of a particular survey. In 2017, the number is back again. In 2018, it rises to more than 90%. So in general, the public awareness of climate change is pretty high. So at least in 2018, almost everybody had heard about climate change or global warming. And what about the beliefs in anthropogenic climate change? So we asked people, do you believe that climate change is caused mainly by human activities? In 2015, about 90%, slightly more than 90% of people said yes, they believe that climate change is related to human activities. And in 2018, the percentage is quite similar. Okay. And about severity, so we ask people if climate change seriously affect the environment in Taiwan, and if climate change seriously affect your personal life. So as you can see here, people consider climate change to affect the environment more than their personal life. So about 86% of people think that climate change will seriously affect Taiwan in terms of environment. But only 65% of people think that climate change is going to affect their personal life. So we may interpret these results as that the general public has not been connecting the issue to their daily life, or at least to themselves personally. And what about public perception of seriousness of climate change? So we ask, how serious do you think global warming is? And also, in the next few years, global warming will exert devastating impact on the environment of Taiwan. So as you can see here, more than 70% of the respondents think that global warming is very serious, and the numbers are quite similar from 2009 to 2017. And so is the question of the environmental impact of climate change. And it's also interesting, in 2018, the questionnaire look at consensus, scientific consensus and uncertainty regarding climate change. So in two questions, we ask, what is the level of agreement do you think scientists have about whether climate change is caused by human actions? So this is not a question about individual public opinion, but how individuals think about if scientists have a consensus. Okay, so 67% of the Taiwanese people think that the scientists have a consensus regarding the cause of climate change. And the second question is, do you think scientists have the level of agreement do you think scientists have about whether climate change is happening or not? 72% of Taiwanese think that regarding whether climate change is happening or not, the scientists have a consensus. Okay, so compare with their level of awareness, compare with their level of perception of severity, their knowledge regarding the scientific evidence does not seem to be as high. Okay, so in that questionnaire, I also asked about uh, their personal belief or their personal certainty regarding climate change. So how sure are you that climate change is happening? So 92.8% think that they are pretty sure. Okay, they are sure that climate change is happening. And regarding how sure are you that health or environmental risk associated with climate change will happen, 88% said they are sure. Okay, so they are personally quite sure about the climate change being happening and will result in health and environmental impact. But again, they are not so sure about the scientific evidence. So it'll be interesting to compare Taiwanese public opinion with the U.S. public opinion. So this is there are a lot of polls over there, but I'm just taking this Gallup poll as an example because it also provides us with a longitudinal comparison from 2001 to 2017. So the belief about global warming is caused by human activities has been quite low in the U.S. We know that before 2014, it's only 50%, and it's higher in 16 and 17, but it's at the level of below 70%. But in Taiwan, that's more than 91%. Okay, 91% of the Taiwanese public believe that human activities is related to global warming. And the second question that is comparable is think about warming will pose a serious threat in their lifetime. So the number in the US ranged between 35 to 42, but in Taiwan, according to several recent research, it's around 65%. So again, the risk perception of climate change is quite high in Taiwan. And this one, okay, the percentage saying most scientists believe global warming is occurring, about this scientific consensus in the US has been growing steadily from 60% before 2014 to 71% in 2017. And in Taiwan, according to the 2018 data that I just showed, the proportion of people is 72%. So that is very close to the US proportion. Okay, so that's why I said that public awareness of global warming or climate change is high. Risk perception is high compared with the US public, but their knowledge or their perception of scientific consensus is not comparable. What about the mitigation behaviors? Okay, so we ask around 10 different behaviors that are environmental friendly. The first one is recycle glass bottles, cans or plastic bottles and papers. So as you can see here, the percentage is very, very high. Okay, 98, 97%. So almost everybody in Taiwan recycles. And or they turn off the lights and unplug electrical equipment immediately. So a significant, the majority of the Taiwanese population have already practiced this. Several some other actions like do not use single-use plastic bags and use reusable bags instead. This is also practiced by many people. Okay, so I would like to emphasize that the first one and the third one are policy related. In Taiwan, we have explicit policy that require people. Well, we don't require people to recycle, but we charge fees for plastic bags. So in order to save the plastic bags, we need to recycle properly in order to reduce the amount of trash that is being put into the bag. Recycle is free. Okay, so because of this policy, people recycle really well. And also, as mentioned before, we have a plastic ban. So many restaurants did not provide straws or did not provide single-use plastic bags in the grocery stores, and we need to pay money for that. So this is also the reason why many people will bring their own bags or their utensils to the restaurant or when shopping. Okay. Um, but there are some other practices that Taiwanese people did not do as well. For example, bring reusable dinnerware. Only about half of the people constantly bring their own chopsticks or utensils when they are eating at the restaurant. And regarding adjust the diet by eating less meat, it's also a much more difficult behavior to practice. About communication patterns, uh, we ask a lot of different channels from which the the public can get information regarding climate change. So as you can see here, from 2009 to 2017, TV is still the dominant medium from which people get information about climate change. We know that this is an internet era, this is a social media era, but it seems that TV still play a very important role in providing information. And internet, we have witnessed a great increase from 2009. Only 37% of people get information from the internet, but in 2017, they are already 70.9%. So internet has surged to become the second most important information source for climate change. And still, newspapers uh, and magazines are also important channels for information. It's noteworthy that before 2015, the information channel is not diverse enough. In other words, people use only one or two channels to get information about climate change. But after 2015, uh, the diversity of channels increased. And if we divide information into a passive and active one, in this survey, in some of the surveys, we ask about the so-called active information seeking and sharing behaviors. So this kind of active information using behavior includes pay attention to information about climate change, or takes initiatives to seek information and or discuss climate change with others. So as you can see here, um, the percentage of people who um, engage in information, paying attention is higher, but in terms of discussion, it's lower, especially in 2015, and it become higher in 2017. And what about public concern? So, are you personally concerned about global warming or climate change? And again, public concern is very high. So, more than 80%, close to 80 and 90% of people think that they're concerned about climate change a lot. And we also ask about efficacy, okay, because efficacy is very important. If people only know about the problem and do not have any knowledge of how to deal with the problem, they may not take actions. So I think that the problem now Taiwan face is that people have high risk perception, people have high awareness, uh, but their action is not enough. So I think one of the important key is efficacy. So most Taiwanese have more confidence and belief in their own change for climate change mitigation than in other people. So we ask about, do you think you know what to do to deal with climate change? And are you confident that you can make some change because of global warming? And people express confidence in themselves. But when we ask about opinions about others, they are less confident regarding others being able to cooperative in reducing carbon emissions. Okay, so this is the efficacy of actions in 2018. And again, most Taiwanese 17. Most Taiwanese have high confidence and belief in their own change for climate change mitigation. Okay. And so we run a hierarchical linear regression analysis to predict pro-environmental behaviors from 2009 to 2017. I think I would like to highlight some of the important findings. We find out that female is constantly positively related to pro-environmental behaviors. Okay, so the evidence is consistent from 2009 to 2017. Age is positively related to pro-environmental behaviors too. Older people tend to take more actions, so this evidence is also consistent. The diversity of information sources did not have any impact before 2013. And as we mentioned, before 2013, people do not use a lot of channels to get information about climate change. But after 2013, the more channels you use, the more likely you are going to uh, 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 engage in environmental behaviors. And active communication also plays some role in 2017. Okay, and efficacy also has a very consistent impact on pro-environmental behavior. And there's one thing that I would like to emphasize is the role of ecological belief. So people's environmental beliefs are quite high in Taiwan, and maybe that's the reason why ecological beliefs fail to exert any impact on people's environmental behavior because there was no variation, and we may experience some ceiling effect of ecological belief. Um, so in terms of the strategy of communication, it may not be useful to appeal to people's environmental beliefs, or it may not be useful to increase people's knowledge about the ecology or the environment because they have already been very friendly in terms of the perception to the environment. Okay, so in general, I think the findings suggest something called young male effect, as opposed to the white male effect observed in the U.S. Right. So based on risk perception literature, they found out that the white people and older people are less perceive less risk regarding technological and environmental risk in the U.S. But in Taiwan, the situation is slightly different. It's a young male effect. So younger people and male are engaged less frequently in environmental behaviors. Okay. So what are some strategies to promote behaviors? Um, a lot of literature has told us that climate change is an abstract and remote issue. Okay, it's far away from our daily life. So one of the so I think that in the beginning, I think we can take a look at how media cover this issue in Taiwan. So as you can see from here, there are four newspapers from 2009 to 2016. The total is 938 articles. Okay, over the 8 years period of time. So if you divide it by 8 and divide it by 4, in each year, each newspaper only devoted about 20 stories, 15 to 20 stories to climate change. Okay, so this amount of coverage is very low, meaning that climate change is an issue of very low media salience. Um, And the media tend to cover more international news about climate change than local news. This is also probably a reason why people tend to consider climate change a faraway issue. So the media should make climate change more relevant to local Taiwanese. In our survey, we asked two questions. How do you think about the impact of climate change on Taiwanese people and versus the impact on people in other countries? And the risk perception of other countries is always higher. In terms of the image and also the tone of coverage, resorting to appealing to this kind of poor polar bear or protect animals is always the key theme that Taiwanese media like to use. And the second is Taiwanese media usually like to use the catastrophe theme in order to when they are covering climate change. Okay. So how do we make climate change relevant? Okay, so I think framing is an important way. If we can connect climate change to people locally, and people may feel more connected with the issue and more likely to change actions. Okay, so we know that framing is a strategy that those environmentalists or scientists can use to organize um, messages in order to make the messages meaningful. And we also have frames in our minds. So if the frames use the media and the frames in our minds fit together well, the framing effect will be stronger. So I would like to take two examples that addressed by Professor Liu a couple of days ago. Um, Using nuclear to nourish renewables, 以核养绿 was an important frame for nuclear energy. Okay, because this is proposed by the pro nuclear power groups, but they are saying that no, we are not supporting nuclear power, but the renewable energies are not quite stable nowadays. So let's keep the nuclear power as an option until the renewables become more mature. But in fact, this is a pro-nuclear option. Okay, so this is an example of framing. The information is the same, but the way we say it is differently. So because of this option, the referendum results at the end of 2018 is the repealing the planned end of nuclear power stations. More people opt for agreement. So people support that Taiwan should uh, uh, develop nuclear power later. And another example is the equal rights between electricity and oil automobiles. Okay, so since 2020, the Taiwanese EPA will not only subsidize electric scooter purchases, but will also pay 5,000 towards a gas-powered scooter. Okay, so that this makes Taiwan one of the only a few countries in the world that still subsidize gas-powered scooter. This gas and oil equal rights slogan is very powerful frame. Okay, so I'm not going to spend time talking about this article because this is in the assigned readings, but I'm going to talk about quickly another articles that I published as a subsequent follow-up study of the first one, because in the first study I did not include efficacy. Okay, so in the second study, I conducted uh, very similar experiments based on appraisal theory. So this time, I included efficacy and knowledge as the variable. So I quickly jump to the findings. Framing climate change as a local issue can make people feel relevant. And this perception of relevance leads to worry, and worry leads to more action. Okay, and this perception of relevance can also lead people to take more actions. Um, for the cues, in my experimental studies, I include three conditions. I provide individual cues, or collective cues, or no cues. In the collective cues, I tell the respondents, hey, 98% of Taiwanese have been doing recycling, or 85% of them have already practiced some good behaviors. Okay, so I provide the percentage of numbers that other people are engaging in to see if this collective pressure can influence individual behaviors. And the results show that the cues have impact on people's knowledge. They know what to do, and this knowledge have influence on efficacy, which in turn also influence action. So providing cues for individuals, tell them what to do, is an effective strategy. But I have one interesting finding, which is about the interaction between emotion and also collective efficacy. Okay, so here, as you can see here, for people with high collective efficacy, this is the results that is counter to my expectation. This group people were supposed to practice more if they feel worried, but on the contrary, their behavioral intention does not increase a lot when they express emotion. And this is a possible free rider effect. So the, based on previous literature, Lam said that the involvement of more people increases the chance for collective action to succeed, but it also decreases the necessity of individual actors. So when we are using the collective cues as a strategy to affect public opinion, we may need to pay attention to this backlash because it may cause the free rider effect. Okay, although efficacy itself is a very important concept. All right, so that's it for my sharing. I'm sorry for the technical problem, and sorry that I need to speed up and may not explain some of my ideas very clearly, but I will welcome the questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shih. We are welcoming questions now. So as they come in, Professor Shih, feel free to go ahead and answer those questions.
Okay, so I got one question from Richard saying that I'm curious what kind of ecological beliefs have been widespread in Taiwan and why. We asked about how do you think about the relationship between human and nature? Okay, and do you want to sacrifice economical progress for environmental protection, things like that? So most people express quite high interest in protecting the environment, and I think it has to do with the long-term movement of environmental protection in Taiwan. We have different focuses on environmental protections. Since the 1980s, I think during that time, the focus is on reducing trash or on make the city, to plant more trees in the city, to greenize the city. So and also recycling. But in the 90s, or in the 2000s, more policies are geared towards recycling and evaluate the environmental impact of major construction projects. Okay, so environmental movements have been here in Taiwan since the 1980s, and it's just that the focus is quite different. So maybe because of the environmental movement, and people start to grow awareness regarding environmental awareness. Okay, so another question is, are those surveyed sponsored by money from the government? Any effect due to that? Okay, so the surveys is not directly sponsored by the government, but by something like the US NSF. Okay, so it's a academic projects, some of them, and at least two of them are we got funding from an environmental NGO. But they are not the organization that carry out the survey. Okay, so the survey is carried out from from the funding agencies. So I don't think that the results are affected by who funded. Okay, thank you. What factors do you think have led to the young male effect in Taiwan? As for the young people phenomenon, I think at least in the university campus, for many university campus, the recycling facilities is not really well set, or it's easy or it's very convenient for college students to dump away their trash without doing any recycle. So the university do not charge fees for garbage. It's not individual household, as I mentioned. We need to pay money for the trash bags. So recycling is practiced more effortfully in order to save money. But in a university campus, sometimes recycling is not that convenient. So this may be one reason why young people are less engaged in environmental protection behavior. But I think we should differentiate civic behavior from this kind of individual mitigation behavior. The young people may not be very active in practicing climate change related mitigation behavior, but they are quite active in recent years in engaging in civic behaviors like signing petitions or participating in protest, maybe because of the prevalence of social media. So I think these two are quite different. So I hope this answered the question. Okay. So the last question is, what constitute young males, teens to 20s? In the regression models, we didn't differentiate our respondents into different age groups. The reason why we call that young males is because age is significantly and positively related to pro-environmental behaviors. So it's apparent that younger people are less likely to engage in environmental behaviors. But in a different survey, or I think in the results that it didn't show, we do break down people according to their occupations. So we found out that students, especially college students, are less likely to engage in pro-environmental behaviors. Okay, so and in Taiwan, it's only legal to interview people from 18 years old, right? So the young people, I think it may refer to young adults. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much, Professor Shih, for a very enlightening talk. And apologies again to our audience for the technical difficulties. So I believe that we're now at time. This video will be recorded for those of you who might have missed the beginning parts. So thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next talk of the series.
Thank you. Bye-bye.